Welcome to JFA Connections with Coffee. My name is Joel DeWitt. I'm the Executive Director of Justice for All. Along with me, I have Nick Lelux. He's the coordinator for our service and learning trips and other things that happen around the ministry, around the warehouse, and outside project type things. So this is episode number 2. First episode, we gave you a little update on what happened with a container and a shipment for the Ukraine, along with transition house update and some of those kinds of things for fundraising. We did end up purchasing a new house for us to be able to use in a transition sense, so keep an eye out for those sort of things. But we're here today to talk to you about our service and learning trips that we have coming up in the next calendar year. So what I got here is Nick, who coordinates those. Nick, I guess maybe to start a little bit, give people an idea kind of where you're coming from, just how you got involved in Justice for All, how long you've been here, and kind of go from there. Just a little background on what you've experienced in being here.
Absolutely. So I grew up actually just north of Rock Valley here in a small village, called Elvord.
Yeah.
Small town. And anyways, I was a plumber for a few years, and I felt God calling me into ministry.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I went to Sioux Falls Seminary through the Kairos Project. I started off as an MDiv student.
Okay.
But, because of JFA, I ended up switching it to Masters of Christian Leadership.
Okay, so MDiv meaning you were going to be someone who preached on Sundays and that sort of thing. Is that kind of what you were thinking when you
I wasn't sure what I was getting into.
Okay.
Being called into ministry, I knew that was one thing. From there, I didn't know if it was to be, a pastor at the pulpit on Sunday.
Sure.
I didn't know if it was a youth group leader. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was one of those deals that I went, started off as an MDiv.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew at that point that I was just going to leave this in God's hands. Going through my MDiv, I ended up getting an internship with Justice for All.
Okay.
And before, I knew nothing of Justice for All.
Okay.
Which was actually pretty neat because it was, a ministry that was close, which helps. And it was something that I got to learn.
Sure. And no preconceived notions as far as this is what they are, this is what they do. You came in with a fresh, unknown experience to Justice for All, which is not uncommon from a lot of people. There's a few volunteers and people that I'll talk to, they knew that this place existed, but didn't know what all happened in here until they walked in the doors and said, "Hey, I'm looking to fill some time volunteering. Can I volunteer here?" That's how it worked for a number of folks that were around here. So
yeah, absolutely.
So it's great to have you in here. Do you remember what year? How long ago was it? How long have you been at JFA?
So I started my internship in January. It's either 18 or 19.
Okay.
And then that went on to July of that year. And actually it was 2019.
Okay.
Because then I started in October of 2019.
Right.
And when I started in October of 19, that was a unique year to actually start in this position. Sure. Without having a lot of training.
Yeah.
Dealing with
training. Yeah.
COVID-19.
Yep, that came up right after you started, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's so that's 4 years.
Yep.
So you've got a little experience under your belt from 4 years of coordinating service and learning trips and kind of what that's like. Maybe could you give us an idea? What does it look like for folks who would be interested in going on a trip, or kind of an overview of what is a service and learning trip? And how does a week look? Start there, and then we can go into where we go and that sort of stuff.
So a service and learning trip to me is you go to a place, and not only are we there to do mission work,
mm-hmm.
not only are we there to help with a house, to clean, but we're also there to understand the culture. One of the things that from how Justice for All looked at it at service and learning trips was exactly how I view, how mission trips should be. Not saying that any other way is wrong,
sure,
but it is, you cannot help a culture out if you do not understand the culture. So that is something that I want people who are interested into understanding that when you're going, it's not just doing a project.
Sure.
Because you can go and do a project, and yes, you can feel good about it, but it is understanding the culture. It is having friends, whether it's having friends, in Mexico or in
Sure.
Mississippi, something that you can look forward to coming back to, and not just looking and saying, "Oh, we did that," but how are my friends doing?
Sure. Yep. So what does it look like for a week? Like, how does a typical week look for someone who goes on a service and learning trip?
So arriving usually depends on the trip. Will depend on the day you arrive. It'll be either Friday or on a Saturday. Sundays, we'll worship with them.
Okay.
Once again, we're trying to be with the culture, which also means serving, and worshiping with them. Going to Mexico, your services are a lot different than here.
It's a different language.
It is different language.
Yep.
So you might want to catch up on some Spanish,
Sure.
get some of those Spanish courses going.
You might want to, from my experience, you might want to catch up on being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
In the sense of going to a place and understanding their culture. When you go to a place to worship on Sunday with people, you're experiencing God present to them the way that they experience it. Not the way that we experience it up here,
Right.
but the way that they experience it. So be ready to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yes. When I started seminary, we actually had to write our
You had to write a paper. You had to write a thesis.
We
I
had
don't know
to-
what you had to do.
we had to write a paper about our lives.
Okay. Biography.
Our biography,
More or less.
our journey, understanding Jesus and
Sure.
just a relationship with him.
Yep.
From testimony.
Testimony.
There
We got
it is. Had a blank there.
Yep.
So we had to, understand. We had to write about our testimony. And after you wrote your testimony, they actually make you write it again. When you send it into, with your papers to be accepted, the thought is, I've done all these sins, I've had all these problems. There's no way they're going to let me into seminary. And then, you get accepted, and then there's a couple courses you have to write, your testimony
Sure.
again.
Yep.
And part of it that they looked at is you have to get used to the fact of being vulnerable. And being vulnerable,
Yeah.
you allow people to, walk alongside you, because if you're not feeling vulnerable, you think you can accomplish anything. But being able to walk along with others, is where they want you. And that's kind of part of that is what I took into these service learning trips. I want people to come with an open heart, learn to be, vulnerable, which is not easy for
Not at all.
people to do, but being able to meet people to help you grow in your walk, because that's something also on these service learning trips that
Sure.
we should be doing.
Yep. So you arrive on a Friday or a Saturday. You go worship on a Sunday in a different culture, something that you're not familiar with. You share a meal with them. You're getting to experience what that culture is like on Sunday. So then, like Monday, what does it look like then? Monday through the rest of the time, or maybe
Yep.
just day at a time if you want even.
Yeah, like Monday through the rest of the week, we're waking up, getting breakfast, then we get devotions.
Okay.
We have our morning devotions every morning, and then from there we're understanding on what kind of the day looks like, kind of what the rest of the week could be looking like, because things can change, from day to day, and we end up going to the project, working alongside people.
What sort of projects would happen out there? That's a question you probably get a lot when they're like, well, what are we going to be doing?
And that all depends on the different ministries
Sure.
that we do. It also depends, even like for an example, we could go to Jackson and it could be a different project every day. It could be a different project every year.
Okay.
It's not, set, day to day, we're going to be going and building a house. It could be, we're going to go to this person's house, we're going to work with them, which are always usually the fun ones when you can go to somebody's house for a day or two.
Sure.
Do a few projects and get to know a family.
So it's someone who's connected to the ministry out there, you get connected to be able to get interaction with them, because they live there all the time. They need a few things done around the house and a few things fixed up, and that's how that connection can happen. So it strengthens the relationship that JFA has with that partner ministry, but also the partner ministry and the person's house you're working on, that all kind of gets worked in there together. So So like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, are there any specifics that happen during the course of, the project can be different. I think we understand that depending on where we're at or where you're at. But is there any regular type of things that happen? Hey, Wednesday night we always do this sort of thing, or I mean, I'm just
And changes a little bit from the different missions.
Okay.
We have different things that we typically do at the different missions as far as what our evenings and kind of stuff looks like. Harvest Hands ministry, we're with the kids
okay.
a lot. We eat with them. You got to play Uno, which, for those that are going to go down to Harvest Hands, you got to watch them play Uno. They like to cheat.
Oh, they don't like losing either, huh?
Nope. And we just spend time with the kids.
Yep.
We get to, as far as language barrier too, a lot of them are kept up on technology. So like our phones, they'll use the translation app to keep kind of conversations going. There's different ministries and stuff too that we've learned to get connected to other than kind of where we're at. We've had people, on Harvest Hands introduce us to other ministries that, gets nice to hear their testimony, how God is using them in that community.
Okay.
We also like to go to different places. Like in Jackson, we've gone to like the Civil Rights Museum, which gives you, a history of Jackson and the whole civil rights movement. Gives you also the history of Jackson. Harvest Hands, we've gone to like a candy store, is one of our big things that we like to do. We go and have like ice cream. We go actually have tacos.
Okay.
Actual Mexican tacos.
That sounds delicious.
It is. They're actually pretty good. I look forward to it every year.
For sure. So one of maybe what I would like to transition to a little bit. I hear you saying things like Harvest Hands and Jackson and some of that kind of stuff. Maybe what we can do is just talk about where are the places that Justice for All goes, and either the ministry partner name or the time of year. Just give some of those sort of things that folks can get a better understanding of.
So Harvest Hands is usually our kickoff.
Okay.
And that is in Juarez, Mexico, which I know a lot of people hear Juarez and they, take a step back. But I have never felt uncomfortable there. I've never been put in a situation where I felt...
Well, you probably felt uncomfortable, maybe unsafe.
Well, unsafe is probably a lot better term to use. And from there, so we'll usually fly into El Paso, and then we'll cross the border into Juarez. And we're actually at a compound outside of Juarez. And that is usually like the third week of like January.
Yep.
And then February, we actually had two that we usually go back to back to. They're both in Jackson, Mississippi. The first one is John and Vera Mae Perkins Foundation. Usually the first week of February, followed by Voice of Calvary Ministry, which is the second week. John Perkins has a huge history here with Justice for All. And just the ministry and just how he touched multiple staff members' lives.
Yeah, definitely. So those two are back to back typically, and if folks want to stay for both weeks, they certainly can.
Yep.
That's not something that everybody does, but it's something that is certainly available for folks to do and get the full experience of what living in the South is like for 2 weeks. It's a different culture. It's a different ball game down there, certainly. Yep. What are the other places? I think there's two more that are in my head.
So then in March, we have Grace Covenant, which is one of our newer ones that we've been going to, kind of annually. This is our third year of actually going there, and that is in Annville, Kentucky.
Okay.
And then followed by that, kind of later in the month, and is Grace Reigns. That is in Colorado City, Arizona, Hilldale, Utah. So it's actually sits right on the border of Arizona and Utah. So that's actually probably been one of our popular ones in the last couple of years, and definitely has a lot of history with it, following with the Mormon church.
Yeah. So March is Grace Month, really. So it's Grace Covenant is in Kentucky,
Yes.
right? And then Grace Rains is in the border to Arizona and Utah, certainly. So, what if you just real quick, I'm thinking about Kentucky. What are some things that they're trying to do out there? Talk about Grace Covenant, I guess, a little bit first, and then we'll talk a little about Grace Rains after that.
So
ways that Grace Covenant reaches out to the community, or what they kind of do on some of those types of things that you've seen in your time visiting there.
So they're in Jackson County, which is definitely one of the poorer counties kind of in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And they have their thrift store there, is very vibrant, for the community, for people to, get clothing and different supplies. They also, help people with projects on their houses.
Okay.
So they definitely have a very positive mark there in Eastern Kentucky, and just the outreach that they have in Jackson County.
Okay.
And it's one of the things that we go out there and we've looked at other houses that have needed help,
Sure.
roofs, or just projects around the house that could be done.
Yep. So we're able to strengthen relationships there a little bit.
Yep.
That's in Kentucky. What about at Grace Rains? What are some of the things that are experienced there?
So Grace Rains is it's multiple kind of ministries together.
Okay.
That it's they have the church with it. They have a thrift store, which is very once again vibrant and positive into the community.
Mm-hmm.
And the church is bringing in new members, people who have been hurt.
Who hurt them? I know that's what I'm trying to get to. I guess a little bit is
Okay.
give a little background on that community and what that looked like.
Yep.
Before, maybe when folks were first started going, and a little bit to now. Trying to lead you into that question a little
Yeah.
bit.
So there was a prophet named Warren Jeffs.
Mm-hmm.
And Warren Jeffs was, the leader of the church, and he ended up moving from Salt Lake City and having people from Salt Lake City move into Colorado City, Hilldale area.
He thought he was pretty much God number
did.
2, right? Like he was waiting for Jesus to come in and hang out with him. So
Yeah.
if you get a chance to look up the FLDS and Warren Jeffs, big history, a lot of scary stuff, not good things.
And I would say, for anybody who is interested in that trip, there's definitely a lot of books and information to read, which
Sure.
because of it, I would almost recommend you reading something before you come out and get an idea, because it is a lot of history, a lot of
Sure.
theology that kind of comes at you that we're here in Northwest Iowa we're not used to.
Yep.
But yeah, Warren Jeffs was on the FBI's most wanted list. He was arrested. He's in prison now.
Yeah.
But from there, there's been a church that has moved in that has helped the community and the culture.
Yep.
And a lot of these people who've been hurt, who followed a religion and have been hurt about it, have now found hope and have found Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's definitely interesting seeing a community come alive, for Jesus, and definitely changing and turning and seeing just different things year after year after year.
Yeah.
And hearing testimonies from people.
Yeah. It's I've heard some of the stories that people have given, like just the way that the FLDS treated women and children, and just you think some of those things wouldn't happen in the U.S. today, but they have.
Yep.
And this is a way that we can work alongside, Grace Rains and strengthen that relationship and be able to loving people the way Jesus would love us is kind of how I see their ministry and outreach, and a lot of the stories that I hear is showing people how to love someone without strings attached or without money attached or without any of that. It's,
right.
Hey, I'm going to love you because God loved me first and Jesus loves me. So here's how that looks, right? So, all right. So just recap real quick. So I got 5 of them, right? So we got, just give me the places one more time and around the time of year that each one goes, and then maybe what the next step could be possibly to get in touch.
Absolutely. So the first one, like I said, our kickoff is with Harvest Hands, which is like the third week of January. Then we go to John Vera Mae Perkins Foundation the first week of February, followed by Voice of Calvary, which is also in Jackson, Mississippi. That's the second week of February. We have Grace Covenant, which is the first week in March.
Yep.
And then we have Grace Reigns, which I believe is like the third week of March.
Sure.
That kind of changes.
There's a little break in between those two, for sure. So one of the things that I do also want to talk about is if people are interested in going,
yes,
or learning more about each one of these, can they come to something, or can they communicate with you, or what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So in October, we will be having a service and learning trip meeting that will actually get put out there here shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, any questions that you may have, I'll actually be at the meeting talking about each of these ministries a little more in detail. And from there, you can get your questions answered, cost, just different ways of getting there, which we, fly or drive,
Yep.
which I can lay those kind of options out for you. And, the next thing to do is just reach out, to me, or give Justice for All a call, and, we can also send you an application.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, visit our website, jfa-nwiowa.org. You'll be able to go there and look through the service learning trips. There's a tab for it. It lays out all the ones that we had talked about, gives a little bit of history about it. There's also a form online that you can fill out to show your information that you can apply to go on a trip for, and what some of those costs are. So, Nick, thanks again for updating folks and giving a little bit of history about how you got connected to Justice for All and where this all kind of ties in. We really appreciate the work that you do here and the way that you're able to communicate with folks and always on. So that's really appreciated. And hopefully someone else out there can find some use out of this information and want to look at coming on a service and learning trip. Talk to your friends, talk to your council members at church and those sort of things. We have a lot of churches that connect to us that want to be able to send people, but don't always want to have the burden of organizing a whole trip by themselves. So that's another way that you can get involved. Well, thanks very much for joining us today on JFA Connections with Coffee. Like I said, I'm Joel DeWitt, Executive Director at Justice for All. This was Nick Lelux. He does our service and learning trips. Thank you very much, and God bless.